Welcome back to a series that I wanted to revisit as I thought it was such a fun and interesting one, a what if series. I looked over comments on my last one from a while back, and one idea that stuck with me was Toontown releasing on other consoles. Now, this isn't Toontown 2 on the Switch, or talking about a new game coming out on consoles. No, this is talking about what if Toontown Online had been released on other platforms besides PC. So to start this, let's preface this with the reality that the fact is that at one point, Toontown Online was genuinely considered for a potential console release alongside the PC release in retail. In late 2005, Sony Online Entertainment's platform publishing as well as Disney Online announced that an agreement had been made for Sony Online Entertainment to publish Toontown Online in North American retail stores. And so it did. Toontown Online appeared in retail stores all over, featuring a CD-ROM, a game manual, a COG poster, and 2 months of subscription. But what was also agreed to in this deal was Sony Online Entertainment acquiring the rights to develop Toontown for consoles, notably the PlayStation 2. So, naturally, as you may be able to tell, it didn't come to be. Why is that? Well, I think there were a number of things. First is the timing. For a while, there was a great optimism that perhaps MMOs on networked consoles were a potential huge market for something like the PlayStation 2. These consoles were the first ones, after all, releasing after what some people call the big three of MMOs from the late 90s had come out. However, by this time this deal went through with Sony and Disney Online, there had only been a few MMOs that made it to the PlayStation 2, and only maybe 2 or 3 that kind of had a real following, with examples such as Final Fantasy XI, and EverQuest Online Adventures. There was no World of Warcraft, no Ultima, no Asheron's Call, and not enough presence from the big MMOs overall on the PlayStation 2. And by this point, not only had the MMO market for consoles been a little underwhelming, the PlayStation 3 was surely in a good stage of development, having only released a year after platform publishing announced the Disney agreement, perhaps only adding to the feel of not wanting to do development on a console port just yet. Not only was timing a factor, however, but also convenience. Toontown, as you know it, is a game marketed mainly for a younger demographic while also still reaching out to adults. The problem with PS2 MMOs is you needed a few things. First, you needed to have an internet connection that you could hook up to your PS2. This means you would have to have at least an Ethernet cable or a dial-up cable. Almost every PS2 MMO required you to have the PlayStation 2 network adapter. Some systems did have this built in, but it wasn't always a guarantee, especially older versions of the console. Not only that, but if you were playing a PS2 MMO that was going to have updates or content expansions, you're going to want or maybe even need to have the PlayStation 2 hard drive expansion so that you can download and store all these updates without any memory card space or speed concerns. So just right there, if you wanted to get kids with a PlayStation 2 playing Toontown, you'd be limited to the ones with a proper internet connection that can be hooked up to the PS2 by either Ethernet or dial-up, have the network adapter, and probably the hard drive expansion as well. I just don't see too many kids lining up to have everything. It's really limiting the player base you'd gain by making this move to consoles. And not only that, but the team working on this port would almost certainly have to make this port cross-platform. It's happened on the PS2 already at this point with Final Fantasy XI, so it is possible but potentially tedious. And then if they did make this move, it would almost certainly bottleneck the updates to the game. One of the biggest issues with Final Fantasy XI is that while it was cross-platform, updates couldn't be too expansive or else it wouldn't work for the players on the console side. Toontown wasn't too bad with this issue considering texture sizes and quality, but it would definitely be a concern to some extent. It would end up increasing management costs, overhead, and I just don't think it ended up being a decision Disney Interactive would have liked to have taken. But that being said, this is a what if, not a why not, so let's talk about what Toontown on the PS2 would have been like. So first and foremost, I think it almost certainly would have required the hard drive expansion. In 2005, Toontown Online required 150 megabytes of disk space roughly, while most standard PlayStation 2 memory cards were 128 megabytes. While it's true that most of this would be stored on the disk, there would only be so much space you could probably leverage in memory cards for game updates down the road, thus making the need for the hard drive. So, that being said, I imagine Toontown would actually work on the PlayStation 2. There'd probably be a small population boost, but nothing that would be considered a commercial success for Disney Interactive on taking such a big jump like this. There'd be a formatted layout where you could activate the speed chat easily, try to navigate through that. Character movement would be simple enough. it would probably require a new targeting system of some sort to be developed. This, for example, was on EverQuest Online Adventures, where you could target characters nearby, and with that easily choose from a set of options what you'd like to do. Picking gags in fights may need some special button layouts, such as a trigger button to navigate which gag track you're selecting in. Otherwise, I could see console users potentially having trouble picking which of their potential 36 or so gags at that point they'd want to use in the 20 seconds, especially if you consider these would probably be kids playing it. Each and every boss, facility, and everything else would have to undergo playtesting to make sure that it could work simply and comfortably enough on a PS2 console. Each upcoming update would have to ensure that it's fully compatible and easily accessible by console players. Any wishes to add new textures, models, and content have to be done in mind with knowing it may affect console users negatively. Overall, realistically, it could have been done, but it'd potentially be a costly process, would most likely have gotten outdated and needing a new port to a newer console sooner than later, and I'm just not so sure how effective it would have been in bringing new players to the table, and that's the express reason why this move probably would have been done if they wanted to try and expand the player base. Funny enough, I actually think if there was ever a time for it to have been done, the PlayStation 3 would have been actually a great console to support this. It would have been feasible. A fair amount of PS3s have Wi-Fi, which would have really solved the internet connection issue, as with the PS2 you needed either an Ethernet cable or a dial-up cable. PlayStation 3s have hard drives with probably plenty space that would fix any adapter or expansion issues held over from the PS2, and with those circumstances they could have focused solely on developing the game to fit comfortably on this console. Other consoles of the time probably would have been similar. An original Xbox actually had a Wi-Fi adapter and enough storage to probably support Toontown. The GameCube, as far as I can tell, just wouldn't have the storage capability to handle a game that has consistent updates. It would support online play, but I don't see how you could get a continually updating game on the GameCube. The Wii and the Xbox 360 would have been just as good as the PlayStation 3 and wouldn't have had any issues supporting Toontown, it's just the fact that they were never considered. By 2011, all signs of Platform Publishing, the subsidiary company of Sony Online Entertainment that had agreed with Disney to distribute the game in retail and talk about potential console ports, had all but disappeared from any signs of publicity, and their website was gone from the face of the earth from what I can tell. So in the end, Toontown was never to be released on console. Eventually, development slowed, lots of staff were laid off over the years, and eventually it led to Toontown's closure as we know it in 2013. So, could Toontown have worked on consoles? Yeah, if there was proper dedication and a few console-specific features coded in, I could see it having worked fairly well on consoles. It's just the circumstances of the time it was considered, the development it would have to undergo, and the realistic end goal got in the way. Would it have brought new players in? Probably. Would it have brought enough in to consider the time and money spent porting it a success? I'm not so sure. But it's a fun what if to think about. And what do you guys think? Share any thoughts on the topic in the comments below, and make sure to suggest any what ifs you want me to cover in the future. These are very interesting and fun to think about, and I would definitely love to do another one. And I just want to say thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time in my next video.